All right, week number 3 of reading Raymond Chandler's Red Wind. Read it 3 times in 3 weeks. It's still good. I'm still finding stuff like paragraphs and stuff will stick out to me that I'll think like, how come I didn't see that? How come I didn't notice that the first 2 times I've read it? You know, like that adds just little subtle things that add to the total of the story. I'm still finding stuff like that, and that's good. It shows that there's complexity, that there's depth within the story, and that will that carry me through 52 weeks? We'll find out. I know I've said this in an earlier video, but the detective in here, John Dalmas, he's a Philip Marlowe type character, so much that in later editions of the story, they actually edited it to change John Dalmas to Philip Marlowe to make it one of the Marlowe stories. But he keeps reminding me of the Rockford Files, just the way he carries himself, the way he speaks, the way he interacts with the other characters in the story. To me, it just screams Rockford Files, even though there is like subtle differences. As I go through here reading this, like my mind keeps switching back and forth between imagining John Dalmas as either Humphrey Bogart or as James Garner, and they just keep swapping places in my mind as to which one I'm seeing in each individual scene. One thing I wanted to point out for this particular video is the use of the weather in the story to set the atmosphere for the book. So in here, it takes place in Southern California, and the Santa Ana winds, just these rip-roaring, powerful, dry winds that whip across the desert and go through the town. It's driving everybody inside. Nobody wants to be out on the streets. In fact, I'll just read the opening paragraph for the story as a whole. There was a desert wind blowing that night. It was one of those hot, dry Santa Anas that come down through the mountain passes and curl your hair and make your nerves jump and your skin itch. On nights like that, every booze party ends in a fight. Meek little wives feel the edge of the carving knife and study their husbands' necks. Anything can happen. You can even get a full glass of beer at a cocktail lounge. And what the weather's doing in this story, particularly that opening paragraph that sets up the entire rest of the story, it's taking the place of the it was a dark and stormy night type of opening. So, you know, that cliche Agatha Christie type dark and stormy night stuff. Except in here, I think there's a specific difference for what it is here. Now, like the hard-boiled detective is not a stranger to rain. In fact, that's one of the main images of the hard-boiled detective is a guy in a trench coat and a fedora walking through a fog bank or through a patch of rain, arriving at like a dimly lit phone booth or something. Not in Southern California because it doesn't rain. But I think even in that, there's the difference in the tone these things are trying to set. Like in the typical dark and stormy night openings, there's trying to underscore, with all like the rain and the thunder and the lightning, they're trying to underscore both the gloom of a certain scenario as well as how violently things can change. A storm has the crash of lightning and the thunder that can strike a tree and blow it up or whatever, and that's trying to underscore in a typical murder mystery or detective story how suddenly things can change for the worse. You know, it's a parallel for the murder itself. In this, with this hot, dry wind, it has all the negative aspects of a storm. It's unbearable. It's driving people inside. You can't go about your normal daily routine while this is going on. But yet, it doesn't have any of the positives that come with rain or with a storm, which is being the air cools off, or anyways, it's just washing the streets clean. Like, it's just all the negatives of a storm with none of the positives. And it just kind of leaves you at the end of it going like, what is even the point? You know? Which I think plays a lot into this story. Not that there's a big like, what is the point at the end of this? But in this story, it relies on a lot of coincidences coming together, not in a hack sort of way, just in that like each character is living their own life, going through their own machinations to achieve their own ends, and just coincidentally, they all arrive at a central point. That central point being the detective John Domus. But in the way this story wraps up, everyone gets a piece of what they wanted, but not the whole of it. And it is one of those things like these hot winds blowing through, and you wonder what's the point of it. Here at the end, everyone gets a little bit of what they wanted, but not the whole, and it's enough to sour the deal, so that they don't like even that little piece they got. They're not satisfied with it, and you end up asking, well, what's the point? Anyways, that's just something I want to think about as I go through some subsequent reads and see if that thought holds up the more I look at this story. Anyways, that's all I got to say about it for now, so I'll see you later.